If this goes on, don't panic. Bringing hope to the world through speculative fiction.
Hello, wonderful listeners. This is Alan, your loyal host and editor. Unfortunately, I've been recovering from COVID, which has put me way behind on deadlines. So I've been kicking around the idea of putting up a throwback interview or two that have never been posted on this feed. The interviews I've been considering include an interview with Peter Beagle the day after he received his Grandmaster Award from the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association at the 2018 Nebulas, and an interview Kat and I did with Xia Xia, probably about 2019. Both of these interviews occur to me because they were both important interviews for me personally, but also because I think they hold historical value and hopefully just will generally be interesting for you to listen to, even if you don't care about the rest of the stuff. More specifically, I feel the Beagle interview really gives you an idea for who he is, if you've never heard an interview with him, but also it's the day after he received his Grandmaster Award, and that's pretty cool. The Xia Xia episode came as China was beginning to be recognized as a big player in speculative fiction, and it's one of the few times she's ever been interviewed by an American, frankly. It is also the first interview Kat Rambo and I did as co-hosts. Now, let me add, however, this was on my old podcast as that wound down. Finally, neither of these interviews are currently available to listen to anywhere. So after some thinking, I've decided to start with the Peter Beagle interview. I'm not sure if we'll get to the Xia Xia episode anytime soon, but it's there waiting. I want to warn you all, I've done very little to improve the audio on these. I have done some stuff, but not a lot, because really, I want to keep working ahead on the interviews that were planned, and those will include Stoker Award finalist and close personal friend of mine, Douglas Gwillem, as well as Harry Turtledove and Malka Older. So you have those episodes to look forward to coming up in the future once I get my life in order and can get those edited for you. I hope you enjoy. This is me, Alan, again. Last interview of the 2018 Nebulas. I am here with the Grandmaster himself, Peter Beagle. Thanks for coming on, Peter. Really appreciate it. Could you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Well, I've recently turned 79 years old, which astonishes me. And I've been publishing books, really, since 1960. But before publishing, I was making up stories. And my mother remembered that before I could write, I would make up a story and get her to write it down. So I've been doing this a long time because I never felt there was anything else I could do. I've written stories, a lot of magazine pieces, screenplays. The only reason I never did advertising was that nobody ever asked me. I wouldn't have been very good at it, but I had a family to feed early on, and I'll try.
Yeah. With all this experience behind you and being such an influential person in your field, what is something that you would tell your younger self? What's a piece of advice?
Mostly, I suppose, keep rewriting. For me, that was the key. I learned to rewrite, and there are places where I think I should have done more. And I can't really, as I say, remember wanting anything else.
Uh-huh.
The only other thing I was ever able to do, even to bring in a little money, was singing and playing guitar in odd clubs and restaurants.
Uh-huh.
Most often for $25 a night. good dinner, sometimes tips. And that was walking around money, as we used to call it. But beyond that, I always felt you've got this one talent. There's so many people out there with so many talents. And all you've got is this one. Just dig at it. Just keep digging.
Okay. So what accomplishment are you most proud of at this point in your career?
Well, I was proudest of the fact that somehow doing what I do, I managed to raise a family.
Yeah.
Which I have a cousin who's an actor, who's been an actor, well over 50 years. He's been in movies, done television. He loves stage work more than anything. But stage work hasn't paid as well as, of course, movies do. They're rewarding in a different way. And he said to me once, the trouble is that you can make a killing in the theater, and some actors do. You just can't make a living. So, from proudest of anything, it's that I've made a living.
Yeah.
Because so few people who do what I do manage that.
Yeah, it's so true.
And for the rest, I'll go with a guy who used to pitch for the New York Yankees in the 1930s, Lefty Gomez, who said once, if they ever give you a choice between being good and being lucky, take lucky. Gomez could say that because he was a very good pitcher, as it happened.
Yeah.
But I know what he meant.
Yeah. I can tell you from my personal experience, having children and raising my family now, even it can be difficult even by conventional standards, much less making up stories for a living, you know. So we're here at this Nebula conference, right? And you're the Grandmaster. What has this experience been like for you?
It's been marvelous. I didn't have to do much. That's one thing. There are very few demands made in my time, which meant that apart from anything else, I got to hang out with Pat Rothfuss.
Yeah.
We never get a chance to visit, given where he lives and where I do. And so that will alone, well, apart from the Grandmaster business, that alone would have lured me to this marvelous. See, it's tied up with the fact that I went to school here.
Right.
I went to college at the University of Pittsburgh back in the 1950s. And it was a different time. I wandered into Pittsburgh at 16 from New York, scared out of my mind, not sure of where I had to go. I had to find DeSoto Hall. What is and where is DeSoto Hall? How do I get there? Yeah. The miracle is, more than anything, I did get there. And of course, Pittsburgh's changed unimaginably. The Pittsburgh I knew simply doesn't exist. And neither really does that 16-year-old kid.
Yeah.
So I would have come to, if I'm going to be a Grandmaster, I'd come where they're having the convention.
Yeah.
But the fact that it was Pittsburgh, that closes a circle for me.
Yeah.
There's something very important about that.
Yeah. I moved here about 15 years ago, and I have no intention of leaving. Pittsburgh is just a great, great little city, you know.
I used to be, when I was first in Pittsburgh, that if I got lost, which happened, I could always get my bearings from the Cathedral of Learning. Where I had most of my classes. Yeah. Because that was the tallest building in town. Yeah. By far. Yeah. Now I can't find it. I mean that literally. I have not seen it. There's so many taller buildings. And I went to a baseball game Thursday night with my publishers, which was nostalgic in a different way, because when I was in Pitt, the only ballpark was Forbes Field, the oldest ballpark in the majors then. And so a lot of my memories of baseball in Pittsburgh do go back to that comparatively primitive time. The scoreboard stayed quiet, except to tell the story for the most part. And now No, all of his every entertainment, every moment. The ball game was almost incidental.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I feel the same way. And I'm as we've discussed in the elevator, I'm not a huge baseball fan, but I do occasionally go to them, and the billboard is like a multimedia experience.
It is
at this point.
exactly. There are parallels to this. I won't go into them politically, but when the presidency is a reality show,
Yeah.
that tells you something about change.
Yeah.
About it. And I'm not asking for Pitt to be what it was. It took him 2 years to sandblast the grime off the Cathedral of Learning when I arrived.
Uh-huh.
I got used to that sound, more or less day and night. And so much, the steel mills were blazing 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
And no, I wouldn't ask Pittsburgh or imagine Pittsburgh changing back, but I'm glad I went to Pitt then.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned Patrick Rothfuss a little earlier, and you guys really seem to have a connection. Not only did you mention it, but you could just I went to your panel where you were speaking about he was
talking
about
interviewing me. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And I find that very interesting. Can I ask, actually, what do you see in Patrick that you connect with so much?
We got thrown together in Decatur, Georgia, some book fair or other. Patrick hadn't published very much then. He was just starting.
Mm-hmm.
And what the hell am I doing in Decatur, Georgia? It was confusing. But in the middle of the confusion, we hit it off immediately.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes that happens.
Mm-hmm.
The same way, for that matter, Neal Gaiman's an old friend, and we were thrown together at a Balticon. I didn't know his work. I don't think he knew more of mine.
Mm-hmm.
But I think personally that happened because we were both dressed in black at the time. I think he had a beard then as well.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow we fell into it like an old vaudeville team. And bouncing one-liners off each other.
Uh-huh.
Very naturally. It happens once in a while. It happened with Pat.
Yeah.
But if I thought about it, I could count the times it's actually happened with another artist or somebody I'm forcibly sharing a day with.
Yeah.
It varies. But in the same way, with Patrick, almost immediately, I think part of his humor.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're both funny, and we're funny in the same way. And that had a lot to do with it. We were comfortable, weren't afraid of each other.
Yeah.
Like that.
During your panel, you began to talk a lot about animals, and it occurred to me that, some of your work is very based around animals, like the Last Unicorn, for example, but also the Manticore story that you read us, which is an animal-like creature, right? I mean, is there a special way that animals influence your work?
Always, from childhood. They've always been there. I can remember working at a summer camp when I was 14 or so. I wasn't a camper. I was there to take care of animals.
Mm-hmm.
And I was much easier with animals in those days than I was with people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just followed somehow. I've always, not always, unfortunately, but when I lived in the country, and for a city boy, I've lived in the country a lot, there were always animals in one sort or another. And if there's an animal in any story of mine, it's likely to become a character, whether I meant it to or not. So that people often ask me about Mr. Cat, who's a major character in my novel Tamsin.
Mm-hmm.
He's the heroine's best friend. And she suffers a great deal when her family has moved to England, and Mr. Cat's going to be in quarantine for 6 months. And she's mortally afraid that he'll be angry at her or that he'll forget her.
Mm-hmm.
And it keeps her up at night worrying.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, Mr. Cat is the one who introduces her to the ghost, Tamsin, who becomes something of her older sister.
Mm-hmm.
But that happens because Mr. Cat meets Miss Sophia Brown, who's a ghost cat who belongs to Tamsin and always had. And that just goes all the way back to my love of animals and the fact that I was always comfortable with animals, so often when I wasn't with people.
Yeah. That's interesting. I think it comes through quite a bit in your fiction.
To add to the confusion, I was allergic to everything in those days. I grew out of it, apparently.
Right.
And I was grown and had children and could have animals.
Yeah.
But I was allergic to everything in the world.
Yeah.
And I was talking about my friend Pat Derby, the subject of my one As Told to Solid book.
Yeah.
And for me, discovering Pat was a fulfillment of so much I wanted to do as a child, because she was Dr. Dolittle.
Right.
She really did have, wolves in the house.
Yeah.
Like that. And I learned a great deal from her. And when heaven's sake, when you're young and married and you're taking the children to visit Aunt Pat, and Aunt Pat has certain chores for you. Whenever I was there, I was always in charge of taking Sylvester, the wolf, for a walk.
Yeah.
And learning that I know what she means about reading animals. She used to say, animals think of one thing at a time.
Mm-hmm.
If you know what that is, you're home free. But it varies with animals. She said there's it's a snap with wolves, cougars. They've got manners and rules.
Mm-hmm.
Bears, Pat said herself, can never read a bear.
Huh.
And yet, well, I knew her. She had two grizzly bears.
Huh.
Seymour was about 1,000 pounds. Gwendolyn, who was smaller and dainty and only weighed about 750. About the same size as the tiger.
Yeah.
But it was long ago. Pat's gone. Her organization still exists. But again, my life has changed so much from those days. I'm just grateful for so many things that happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, everybody here is, and everybody here really appreciates your work, and, so thank you for all of that. And, we're actually running out of time right now.
I'm delighted to have the opportunity. Very grateful for these few days in Pittsburgh. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. Definitely glad to have you. Before we go, is there any future projects coming out that you want to talk about, or?
Well, I know that Jacob, my publisher, will have probably next year a new collection of short stories.
Okay.
Meanwhile, I'm working on a new novel, which is driving me nuts, which is what novels are supposed to do.
Right.
It's a sequel to Two Hearts, which is a sequel to The Last Unicorn.
Oh, okay.
The Last Unicorn was a nightmare, such a nightmare to write. I waited 37 years to write Two Hearts.
Uh-huh.
But Two Hearts was such a snap.
Yeah.
It flowed so easily that I'm hoping this will continue in that line.
All right. Great. Fantastic. Thank you again so much. We appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure.
And that's all for this throwback episode. I hope you all have enjoyed the conversation. As always, if you have the chance, please rate and review us wherever you listen to your podcasts. And don't forget, we have a Coffee and Patreon. Thanks for listening. We'll see you soon.